Hi there, Zach DeSetti, Jim Stanziola with me today. We're glad you have joined us. We're going to talk about something that's maybe on our minds at some times, but not something that we want to talk about. Usually we're prompted by something happening in our own family. That brings up the conversation of estate planning. So Jim's going to give us a couple ideas as to what we need to do if we haven't engaged in any kind of estate planning. Maybe we need something really simple like a will. Maybe we need something we feel like a little bit more complex for, things that we want certain assets to go to a certain person or something titled a certain way. So you mind walking us through maybe just the basics of getting off the ground if we've never done any kind of estate planning before and just some of the objectives there?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. And again, I'm Jim Stanziola with Stanziola Estate Law. Estate planning doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be expensive. In my opinion, and I'm sure I'm biased here because I'm an estate planning attorney, but everybody should have some type of a estate plan, no matter how old you are. The advantage of that is you are in control. You're in control of what happens to your assets at your death and how they're distributed. If you have young children and something happens to you, or if you're married, your spouse, what have you, we obviously want the parents to raise their own kids, but in the unlikely event that something does happen, it's important that you have something that specifically says you want to put your children in the best possible situation in terms of guardianships and care. And that's something you can do with an estate plan.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't realize, what we think will happen upon our death if we kind of don't do anything is not necessarily the case. And there's different things like going through probate or, titling of assets that can just get caught up in our courts and everything. And it just makes for a really messy process at a time in your life, which is not, probably not the best. So.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really wants to leave a mess for their spouse or for their kids. And I describe probate as like touching a porcupine. It's not a pleasant process. It's expensive. It takes time. And it's a public process. Anybody can go down to the courthouse and see what you have. You can do certain things with respect to your estate plan and the titling of your assets, beneficiary designations, to avoid that painful process.
Yeah, I mean, so when we talk about your 401ks or IRAs as you retire and things like that, I think that's what you're alluding to, that a lot of those things can just be titled with beneficiary designations, and that takes care of, for a lot of people, the assets that they need to, have control under.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a participant in a 401k plan, for example, those assets pass by way of beneficiary designation, and we know some clients who forgot to update their beneficiary forms, for their 401k plan. So you want those assets to go to whom you want them to go to. And also, you may want to have some type of trust set up to hold those assets if you have young children in terms of taking care of those kids. And you determine who's going to be the trustee of that trust in terms of managing those assets.
Yeah. A lot of people can get, I think, to your point, a lot of people can get a lot of things done with just titling and a will. But do you want to touch on just really quickly why someone might kind of take that next step to using a trust, what you just alluded to is avoiding probate, and just some of the basics of why that's an important planning?
Yeah, sure, Zach. That a lot of people, when they think about, and this holds true for anybody of any age, when they think about doing an estate plan, they think about having a will. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the operative word in terms of having something, a vehicle for distributing your assets. And really, what I'm seeing across the board with younger people, middle-aged people, older people, is instead of a will, having a revocable living trust. And the will, and the problem with things going through the will is it's going to be subject to probate and that process. So to avoid that and having a vehicle for distributing your assets effectively, the living revocable trust is often one of the best vehicles to use in terms of avoiding probate.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think that covers really just some of the basics. Like Jim mentioned, I mean, we can get into the weeds on estate planning, but it doesn't have to be that complicated.
No, not at all.
Not at all. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us as your advisor. We'd be glad to put you in touch with someone like Jim to kind of talk through those options, whether you haven't set up an estate plan before, or maybe you just would like to review some old documents. We'll definitely get that coordinated for you. So again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.